Another thing I wanted to touch on was like feedback, basically along the same lines. Like, you know, feedback, that's what drives and really gets up to the editors to make the decision is what we need to cover, what people are interested in. So that two-way street of, like, you know, if you hear a story, even if you don't agree with it, like, you know, send on some friendly tips, suggest different angles to approach stories, and that's what drives people along. Another thing that I wanted to touch on was like acronyms. I'm here trying to understand about the planning process, and I saw a couple. APA, I know everybody in the room are probably familiar with what APA means, and I saw one on the screen, NIBY. It just gets...
NIMBY, not in my backyard.
It's so, well, yeah. There's so much, like, it takes me time to sit back and process, and like, okay, it takes me away from the discussion to follow up on what all of these acronyms mean. So plain speak is very helpful to get things across. So that's my 2 cents, but I'm enjoying everything.
Marla?
Thank you. I said to Jeff, after I saw that map of climate change, I said, Jeff, we should put that map on the front page of the Sun Sentinel. And I bet you would get the editors clamoring for climate change stories, because people would get that information and they would want to know more about it, and they would be very concerned about it. So I really have to say that I'm feeling more and more that we're doing this the wrong way. You know, this professional to professional, and then we all get together and we all make the decisions, and then we let the public know all about it, and then we try to educate them. In my old age, am becoming a really active community person, and I'm seeing that it's really got to go the other way, especially in our culture here in South Florida, given the recent the elections and the way it's probably going to be going in Tallahassee, that the stuff has got to come from the bottom up and not from the top down. Just, so that's my feeling.
Good point.
Something else that might work for some of the planners, and you might be doing this already, would be to work with the schools in your area, particularly high school students, middle school students. Go in there, work on exercises with them, plan your community. Talk to them about what you would do, what are the hazards, what are the environmental situations, and all of that, which might also attract media attention.
Come on, Thomas.
Thanks for the lead-in, because that is exactly what I was going to say, but in a slightly different context. What we've had at the Center for Environmental Studies, what we've had some really quite good success at is taking a theme and introducing it not as a casual visit to school, but into the curriculum. That takes a lot more work. We've done it with water resource issues for the Water Management District. We're doing it right now for the Ocean Energy Project, and we plan to do it for climate change too. But it's not, to be successful at doing that takes a lot of work. It means looking at what the FCAT is, looking at what skills you have, and then working with the teachers with workshops. It takes about 2 years to do that successfully, and a few dollars. But it's really successful because the teachers love it, and the kids love it, and you're not indoctrinating them, you're passing information in a reasonable way. And we can do this with the planning process, I think. We all can do this with the planning process. And if you get to the kids, they get to their parents. It takes a long time, but it's worth it.
All right, well, so I have another question. So what is the role of the university in this? You know, I mean, if I think about, you know, we were talking about climate change, we're talking about mega regions, we're talking about a planning system that has its problems. Your professional planners have an opinion, have a way of doing things, there's the press, but what is the role, what can we as a university, you know, you have the 3 planning programs are represented, what can we do to bring these issues to the forefront, to inform people and to help the discussion get along?
Well,
somebody else wants to jump in.
Studies come out of academia, and if they're a compelling topic and crystallized well enough, that can always lead to coverage. So I think that's a really important thing, especially if it's peer-reviewed. Allowing issues to gel and crystallize, like this for today, or to have some kind of a high-profile topical event, is always helpful for editors.
I was going to say, even if it's not a compelling story for the news, I think it'd be good to offer articles for the profession, especially now that we're going to electronic newsletters. We're not limited by the length, and especially with our website, it's more accessible to just the general public, not only as planners.
I think you could help us highlight the success stories. I don't think people want to hear about, we got more sprawl problems, we got more traffic congestion, sea levels rising. I mean, they've already got as many problems as they can deal with and more. And when we constantly reinforce, I mean, we do it too, the negatives associated with planning, I think that just gives people one more reason not to follow it. I think helping show in particular how we can resurrect the mistakes that we have made. I still maintain that a lot of the problems that we're dealing with are the ones that were created prior to growth management systems being put in place, and now we're seeing the consequences of what bad design, bad decisions in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s even mean, and the bills do, and people don't like it, and it's very convenient to blame the current system.
Just quickly, I want to. I think there's a connection here between what you said, and I'm sorry I don't know your name. Well, Marilyn, you. Thank you for saying what you said. When Dr. Mitsova got very cautious with Jeff's question, the real estate, I suddenly took another perspective, because I thought also get this out there. This is important to read, but it's also sensational, and I realize there's a balance. And the academic realm is not going to want to live in sensationalism. They're going to be very cautious about their findings. However, there is a balance. And I then started thinking, well, what is the story? Well, I think the story is Dr. Mitsova and her interest in looking at this. And it's not, I mean, the questions that arise from her research is where the public wants to be informed. But if she is personally going to be concerned about the sensationalism that a statement might make among the community, and she's not completely sure of it, we have to be careful. So it's a really interesting balancing act, where I think of someone like Dr. Robin Fiore, who's an ethicist, and bringing a question like that to the folks doing ethics in the community about where do we inform in a way that we can all join in the questioning but not be overwhelmed by the sensationalism that we often see in the media.
For universities, I mean, obviously one big thing is just the convening power that a university has, and being able to bring people together and to go beyond these sort of professional to professional discussions. And by the way, I certainly agree with Jeff. I do not subscribe to that at all. I think it's that everyone talking about these issues is enormously important. I guess the other thing is universities' roles. I've found oftentimes within universities there are people who understand issues I'm writing about really well, yet I didn't know they were there. And so, finding ways to present those people who in many cases have been studying an issue for 20 years and you don't know it because they've been in academia and publishing academic papers, and yet folks in the mainstream press haven't found them.
See, I found it the whole conference for me, organizing the conference, was really educational. To work with Neil and figure out the things that he worried about and things that he thinks about as somebody who's more interested in journalism than I am, just was really opening my eyes, you know, thinking about how do you organize a conference, what are the sound bites that you're looking for. As a planner, I would have never written things, you know, I would have never thought about this title. You know, that I wouldn't have probably never thought of it. But it works, you know, and it actually got people's attention to it. But as a planner, it kind of feels uncomfortable.
Of
you know,
course.
it's like, geez, do I really want to say that?
Right. Well, there, you know, there's the old adage that at a scientific or academic conference,
Right.
you know, the poster session, you know, with the scientists or researchers will start at the top, go through the methodology, and then come to the conclusion. But you can always tell the journalists at one of those conferences, because they're going along like this, looking at the bottom first. Because you take the poster and you put it upside down, and that's the way a journalist not only writes, but thinks. And that's, as you say, that's uncomfortable for an academic, and understandably so. But I also think in my years of covering the environment, I know Neil can talk about this too, and that we have seen a slow sea change, at least in environmental studies, where researchers and scientists now are, you know, they have been so pressured to keep quiet and not take a public position or even speak publicly about their studies. But I was just speaking, giving a talk at the University of Santa Barbara, and California, Santa Barbara, where one of the climate researchers said when she first saw her data set with a group of her colleagues, when they first finally had it all on the table and they were looking at the results, she excused herself and got up to the bathroom and threw up at what she saw. And from that moment on, she realized that she's not going to be constrained by the tradition of academics, which is not to speak publicly, or certainly not to the mainstream media, about your work. And she is no longer doing that. And I believe a lot of other scientists who are studying these really critical, important issues, including planning, are coming to realize.
For the role of the university, one thing I've noticed in the past few years as a plan student is that planners often say, well, I cannot say that because I'll get fired.
Yeah.
They get afraid to take a position. And then at public hearings, you hear the public, you know, who's, you know, very concerned about something, they say, well, I really am afraid to say anything because I don't know enough. So you get the planners who are too afraid to criticize what the council is, you know, voted on because they don't want to get fired. And you get the public too afraid to say anything because they don't know enough. I think the university has to play a role in taking a position. I don't think I've ever once seen the university at a public hearing in Miami, for example, where there's some major things going down with the public. If the university took a position on current planning controversies and just went in there and weighed its opinion at public hearings, I think that'd be a big deal. I know Los Angeles did this with the bus riders union. The LA School of Urban Planning actually took a position in working with the public to get the transit routes to go along with people actually work and shop. And they went to the hearings to change the public transit system. So the university's there with the public taking a position that the planners and the municipality actually are afraid to take. So I think if the university made itself publicly present, it would actually get public media.
All right, any closing comments? Yeah, sorry.
I'll start with one. Maybe this is another role for the universities. I think one of the themes that we saw in these elections, not just in Florida but nationally, is that people think that we've got too much debt. We're creating more potentially. And, you know, we've tried this in the past and it just hasn't stuck. But I think documenting how poor planning decisions is going to cost financially, if nothing else in the long run, is an arena that we have got to focus on. But it gets caught up in statistics and numbers that make for a dull, relatively dull, complicated discussion. Somehow we've got to break through that. But I think there's some appeal there if people could really understand what the consequences were.
Anybody else?
The website is sej.org.
Any other plugs?
michaelsinger.com.
MiamiHerald.com.
You don't want to do 1,000 Friends or Florida APA, you know?
We both have websites. You can find us on Google.
I would like to thank the panelists for a very good discussion. And I'd like to thank all of you for being here today. I thought it was an interesting discussion, a little bit different from what we normally do at planning conference, I think. I kind of enjoyed this discussion among people. I hope we can do this again. I hope the three chairs can come together and maybe do it at UF or FSU next time. And think about how we can continue this discussion. And also, Neil, I mean, I think this partnership is very interesting and offers some really interesting opportunities. So thank you. Thanks, everybody.